far on the cutting edge, we've given you an up-close and personal crash course in pair lifts and jumps. Now Roz and Peter are going to take you back to school again to unlock the secrets of skating's most ignored elements, the different kinds of spins.
Okay, the most asked question in skating is how does a skater not get dizzy when you're spinning?
Roz, that is the $10,000 question. And actually, when you learn how to spin, you do get dizzy at first. And really, the dizziness is the brain's way of panicking to something that's wrong. But eventually, it relaxes and accepts the condition. And it's similar to that of, like, say, a sailor getting his sea legs together or a jet fighter pilot getting used to the G-force in an airplane. And I'll tell you, if we take 2 weeks off from spinning, we get dizzy too.
So why doesn't a skater spot while spinning as a ballet dancer does? Well, for starters, a ballet dancer spins much slower, having time to find a focal point. A skater is spinning much faster, and if they were to spot, they would strain their neck. So what we do is we focus inward, finding the balance through the body down into the ball of the foot.
Let's take the basic scratch spin. The first thing we do is we find a pole, like an axis, running straight down through our body. That's what we rotate around. Now, how do we make the spin go faster? What happens is you bring the arms and leg in together. That changes the polar moment of inertia, and that's the force that makes the spin go faster. And Scotty Hamilton had it mastered at the '84 Olympics.
Now, if the skater isn't completely centered and balanced as Peter was talking about on the axis, the spin will start to travel across the ice as opposed to staying in one place. Now, in a big arena, you might not notice the skater moving, but the judge is focusing on the feet, and the turns that the blade is making on the ice will travel, and in the short program, that is a deduction.
And as our camera stays in place, notice how Tara Lipinski's layback travels.
Now we're going to talk about some of the different spin positions, starting with the beautiful classical layback spin that the ladies will be performing in the short program as a required element. First thing the skater learns is the leg position. Free leg comes up and back with a turned out thigh, knee, and a pointed toe. The higher the leg in the back, the better. Then they learn the back position. It's not just the neck that drops back. Starting from the base of the spine, the skater learns to drop the entire back. Now, a skater gets dizzier in this position because they're turning upside down. What the judges are looking for, of course, are the leg position and the position of the back. Now, the arms, whether they're up or whether they're down or whether they're moving or out, that is the skater's choice.
A look at the different positions across the body, up in front, and of course, Dorothy Hamill's classic layback.
Well, thank goodness guys don't have to do the layback spin, but something men and ladies perform, the sit spin, and this is recognizable for obvious reasons. But let's break it down a little bit. The sit spin starts up here, and then it sinks down into the left knee. Now, what makes it more difficult? If a skater stays here, that's okay, but if a skater gets all the way down to this position, that makes it more difficult. And I wonder if I can even get up from this position, because you can see that it takes many years to build up the left thigh just to get there. John Curry takes it to a nice sit spin position, but Eldridge goes even lower.
And now the camel spin. Once that skater finds the center of balance, skater starts on a bent knee, slowly rising into a straight knee, and at the same time as the skating leg straightens, the free leg comes up basically into a spiral position. Now what the judge is looking for, leg extension, a straight knee, a pointed toe, and not a flat back or a drooped back, but an extended back position with the head up as well.
Nicole Bobek doing a flying camel, which is the exact same position. It just starts with a jump to the opposite foot.
Now take all of these spins that we've talked about in different positions, put it together and you have a combination spin. And a combination spin is really hard because you're changing feet and you're changing position. And what can go wrong during that? Well, number one, you can lose your balance. And number two, the speed can really drop off within the spin. So it takes so much time in practice to perfect these spins and really do them well when you're under the gun in competition. Tara's got it together. Camel spin, sit spin, lay back, back sit. Right on the money.
And it's not just jumps that the skaters are practicing for so many years, it's also these spins, and they take so long to master.
Yeah. Are you dizzy?
All this information, I'm definitely dizzy.
That's because you're blonde.
Well, spins are just one of the 8 elements judges will be looking for in the ladies' short program. But who are these judges that everyone is always talking about? Well, with us today is Olympic Judge Jean Senft from Canada with a behind-the-scenes look at what goes on the other side of the boards. Welcome, Jean.
Hello.
So the ladies' short program is coming up.
Yes.
And we're going to take a look at some of the elements through your eyes.
Okay.
Now, for starters, 6.0 is a perfect mark. What is the base mark you start from before the deductions?
It absolutely depends on the skater's performance. The first skater comes out and sets the standard around which all other skaters are placed, above or below that standard. The base mark is the mark that the performance would deserve without deductions.
And now, speaking of deductions, the most critical, if you would agree, is the combination jump.
Yes.
And that, for me, is the hardest to tell where the deductions come from because there are so many things that can happen.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
And I think I know I've made all those mistakes. Starting with what happens when the skater falls on the very first jump and omits the second part of the combination.
Then probably that's a 0.4 deduction. The maximum deduction is 0.5. That would only happen if both jumps were omitted. The first jump in this instance would have been attempted, but because they didn't complete it and the second jump didn't exist, it would be a 0.4.
Now, what happens if they fall on the second jump?
Probably a 0.3.
And how about if they do a turn in between the two jumps?
That's actually not as much of a problem as most people think. It's really only a 0.1 deduction.
Is that worse than, say, a hand down, which is very common?
They're actually very similar. A hand down or a foot down is a 0.1 to a 0.2 deduction, depending on how badly it's put down.
Now, when you say a foot down, is that actually sort of a cheat? Like I've seen on a triple Lutz, before the landing happens, the toe goes completely in the ice. Now, someone at home watching TV can actually see that without instant replay, but do you catch that?
Yes, you do catch that. And certainly you catch that when you go to practices. You can tell the skaters who always rely on that slight touchdown before they do the landing. And so you watch for that in the competition.
Now, how about on the double axel? In Sarajevo,
Yes.
I had skated a very clean program, and on the very end of the landing, I sort of brushed the free leg on the ice. And I was hammered. I mean, I was 5th in the short program. Why was that such a deduction when everything else had been clean?
Well, when you skated in Sarajevo, perhaps there was more attached to that kind of a fault. To me, in today's competition, it would be very minor. It would be a 0.1. It would be a simple touch. But perhaps you were a larger deduction was taken off at that time.
Well, I've always wanted to know that. Now, we've been talking about spins. I know
Yes.
there are obviously different positions, there are different changes of feet. Do you count every single rotation of the spin on each spin for every single skater?
Absolutely we do. And I know that sounds ominous, and it is a task. You have to keep your concentration. You're actually counting the number of revolutions in the spinning position. So if it's a sit spin, you don't start counting until they're right down in the sit position.
I see. There's footwork. I mean,
Right.
how do you tell the difference of difficulty in the footwork? Because there's so many different feet and edges. What do you say is the most difficult that you're looking at?
You'll look at speed. Speed is a factor. The faster, the better. You'll look at how intricate the footwork is, how many different changes of position there is. You'll also look to see if the skater's always rotating in one direction. If they rotate in both directions, that's more difficult.
And how do you keep track of all of this throughout the whole night?
It requires a lot of attention, a lot of focus. I really, truly feel that a judge has to be fit to be able to sit there for hours on end and keep that concentration.
Are you keeping notes?
Absolutely.
Because I actually, as a skater, I've looked up a few times and I've seen a judge with their head down, and you have that split second of thinking, well, they're not even watching. Is that true?
You try and you get very good at taking notes in small spaces without looking down.
Now, it's common for judges to come to practices to watch. Do you prejudge the event?
No, you don't prejudge. You know why you don't prejudge? Because it never happens in competition like it happens in practice. The skaters who are brilliant in practice often don't skate well in competition, so you just cannot prejudge an event ever. Why you do go to practices is to understand the general level of skating, and you also go to see if there's anything new or unique that you should be able to analyze in advance and understand the difficulty factor, so that if it is performed well in the competition, you can give adequate credit for it.
But if there's that base mark that we were talking about, how come sometimes in the technical mark, not the artistic, because I know that's sort of a personal choice, how can there be, say, a 5.8 all the way down to a 5.4 if it was an obvious mistake with your obvious deductions? I mean, a lot of times...
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I mean...
But we've seen it.
Well, if the base mark is a 5.8, then the deduction needs to come off that. If you're saying that one base mark is 5.8 and one is 5.4, that's fine, as long as the same deduction is taken from those base marks. If it's 0.4, then you should have 5.4 and 5.0.
And do politics play a part in all of this?
No, I don't believe they do. Particularly in single skating, I don't believe they do. I think it's black and white. The jump is either landed or it's not landed. Certainly there's a little bit of subjectivity in terms of the presentation mark, but I believe the deductions are very real, very objective, and I think it's judged extremely well.
Well, you've been a great help. Thank you very much.
Thank you.